That I think that's what gets left out sometimes, even of good biblical preaching on sin, is outside of many Wesleyan traditions or even some Reformed traditions. But Wesley had the emphasis on the cleansing part, the putting a new heart within you part. That's where the Christians aren't perfect, just forgiven gospel misses it. It doesn't finish. I think it's a good beginning of the gospel, forgiveness, obviously, but it doesn't finish. And you actually say, well, no, there's actually a lot more to what holiness is.
Yeah. The Ezekiel 36 text is programmatic for me. Such an important text that so many things come together in one place. So again, Israel's redemption is not mere forgiveness. It's not, I'm just going to bring you back to the land and it's going to be the same old, right?
Right.
So I'm going to bring you back to the land and I'm going to cleanse you, not from 75% of your uncleannesses and idolatries, not from 99.99% of them, from all of them, right? So you're going to be clean, completely clean. And that's not, I really don't think that's a forensic thing, right? To be cleansed of your idolatries is not a forensic standing.
Right.
It's a transformative power. And you get the regeneration language that comes, right? In order to do that, I'm going to take out your heart and give you a new heart, new birth, new life, right? This isn't a judicial forensic metaphor. It's a regeneration language. But even then, that's not the telos, right? Taking out the heart of stone and giving you a heart of flesh, your regeneration, your sanctification, your initial sanctification, your ongoing sanctification, those things are not ends in themselves.
Right.
They serve another end, and the end they serve is that the nations will know God is God and that he is able to save. He alone is able to save, right? So all of a sudden, holiness isn't just a matter of, hey, we should include this in our theology of salvation. It's, hey, we should include this in our theology of mission.
Right.
Because the mission of the people of God isn't just to go out and get converts. The mission of the people of God is to embody the holiness of God in a way that testifies to the magnitude of his power to transform sinners into saints or holy people, with a view to the nations coming to God as the one true God, being cleansed, and also becoming participants in that transforming experience of becoming holy. All right. So this is what I think is a missional theology of holiness, or the way we incorporate holiness in our missional theology is, it's not just like, let's go preach the gospel, and once we preach the gospel, that's all we've got to do. A lot of the modern missions movements, like, we just got to make sure all the unreached people have heard the gospel. That's our job.
Right.
But that's just the beginning. Like, the mission of the church from Ezekiel to the Great Commission is global obedience to Jesus. Mm-hmm. And the word for that is holiness.
Yeah.
So our mission isn't just to preach the gospel to unredeemed people and hope that they get converted. The mission of the people of God, Old Testament, New Testament, is let the nations be holy.
Yeah. I think, tell me what you think about this. I think that sometimes, by the way, as an aside, there's a great line. I don't have it pulled up, but it's one of the pages you say in the book, holiness, mission, and worship. Those three go together. And if you lose any one of them, then it crumbles. And I thought that was a brilliant line. Like, holiness is necessary, and holiness gives us the ability to then worship God in a pleasing and holy way, which then, like you're saying, drives mission. Do you think, this is a hunch and I've never researched it out, but I feel like much of the modern mission movement, and so modern, say the last 200 years, 150 years or so, much of it has been driven by an assumption that if we get the gospel to every people group on earth, then Jesus can come back.
Yeah, it's a misreading of that. The gospel will be preached to the ends to all peoples or the ends of the earth, and then the end will come, right?
Yeah.
It's not talking about the end of the world as we know it, right?
We're doing a series on the olivet discourse here at Disciple Dojo, and so that's fresh in my mind. And I think if that's your goal as a missionary, you really don't care about I mean, I don't want to say you don't care. You might on some level, but your primary care is not the discipling and transformation of those people as God's image bearers, but
Yeah.
it's just getting the message out so that Jesus can come back.
Yeah.
And
So I mean, I take my view on the Olivet discourse is that it's all about the destruction of the temple.
Right.
That it's really not about the second coming.
Right.
Again, I'm probably in the minority on that. That doesn't mean I deny the second coming. I have a book on that. My dissertation was on resurrection when Jesus comes back. So
Right.
I don't want to be misrepresented.
no, you're in good NT Wright
Yeah.
company.
That happened one time. Somebody was like, "Does O'Reilly reject the second coming?"
Yeah. You're just
Not
like,
that
no,
I'm paying
just in
attention.
Mark 13.
Like, that's the heart of my scholarship right there, right? So I just don't think I think N.T. Wright reads it largely correctly. Ben Witherington and I have kind of had some little fun over coffee. Like he thinks Wright's wrong, and so we kind of have a good time with that.
Yeah.
I get that's probably the minority view, but it I think it makes the most sense of that text.
Yeah.
So all that to say, like the end in view in the Olivet Discourse is not the end of the world or the parousia, as the way it's talked about in the New Testament in Paul's letters. It's the destruction of the temple and all of the kind of socio-political order that went with that.
Right. The end of that age.
Yeah, it's the shift. And it has to do with the exaltation of Jesus.
Right.
And his, all the stuff about, I mean, you know this, but the heavenly bodies, moon being turned to blood and stars falling from the sky and sun not giving its light, right? That's not a literal like comet. It's not predicting like a comet,
Right.
kind of storm or something like that. It's like heavenly bodies symbolize socio-political national entities in the ancient world, right? Even today, if you look at the Middle East, they got like moons and stars on their flags, right? Because moons and stars represent political entities, nation states. So to say
we
that
got
like
50
stars
of
are
them
going
on
to
our
fall out,
flag. So
yeah, right. So when you say like stars are going to fall out of the sky,
Yeah.
you're saying there's a power shift.
yeah.
Right, that's what he's saying.
Yeah.
And the power shift is from the powers of the world, right? Wrangling. Why do the kings of the earth plot against the Lord and his anointed one?
Right.
And the one who sits in heaven laughs. And the Olivet Discourse is a prediction that after Jesus is crucified, he's going to be vindicated and enthroned over all the powers of the world.
Right.
That's what the stars falling from. So that's about, and this is weird. This is hard for us to understand. I'm not saying I completely understand it. But the apostles had this idea that in their age, the gospel had been preached to the whole creation. Paul says that in Colossians.
Right.
And so the only thing I can think is like he has to think with the resurrection and enthronement of Jesus, which Colossians is entirely about, right? Mm-hmm. Not just the resurrection, but the exaltation of Jesus. That new situation, right, involves some sort of inherent, implicit announcement to the whole of creation that Jesus is Lord and God raised him from the dead.
Yeah.
I would love to sit down with Paul and ask him, what in the world, like, help me understand what you mean by that, right?
Yeah.
But that's the kind of like gospel preached to all the nations and then the end will come. Paul, gospel's already been preached to all creation. Like there's something going on there, right?
Right. It's not just about a message that needs to be telephoned to everyone. It's the evangelion, the proclamation of the good news that there's a new world order in place, and we can either be part of that or we can be against it. And
it's also the message of Revelation, right?
The exact sounds very familiar. A book again you're familiar with.
So take the Great Commission, right? The Great Commission does not say all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me, so go make converts,
right?
Or go preach forgiveness of sins, or go it doesn't even just say go preach the gospel, right? It says teach all the nations to obey everything I've commanded you, right? the telos of the Great Commission is global holiness,
Right.
not just preaching. The telos isn't just getting gospel access to the unreached people groups, right? That's an initial step. You can't obey everything Jesus commanded if you don't have access to the gospel, right? But we've made that intermediate step the end instead of recognizing. And so there's a couple parallels here, right? So in our soteriology, we've made conversion the telos, the end, when conversion is instrumentally related to holiness. And in our missiology, we've made conversion, or preaching the gospel with a view to conversion, the end, when preaching the gospel with a view to conversion is instrumentally related to the end of the church producing a holy people for a holy God. From the start, God has wanted a holy people for himself, and that's what the mission of the church is about.
I think there's just such a lack of realization that the gospel is transformative, like at a deep level. And so, okay, think a few years back, the big hoopla when Kanye West went through his Christian phase. Everybody on social media, everybody in the news, he was on one of the late night shows with his gospel choir doing his Kanye church services, all this stuff. And Christians were like celebrating and I just remember watching that going, Jesus told a parable of 4 soils, and we don't know what kind of soil this is. And obviously now you can very clearly see it was not deep soil. But there's so much excitement, even in churches that do altar calls. Every head bowed, every eye closed, those moments. And then it's like, now there's a celebration in heaven for every one of you that just raised your hands. And part of me is like, is there a celebration in heaven? Because in 2 years from now, you're going to not be in the faith. Then did heaven really celebrate? Or
what's the proof text for celebration in heaven anyway? I don't know that one.
I mean, I think it comes from the prodigal son parable.
Okay.
I think that's what it is. And the idea that,
that's about.
Let's throw a feast because the prodigal son is returned. I understand that. And I don't want to come across as like asking people to come to faith.
Conversion's important. It's really crucial. We want people to convert.
Well, okay, so I'm a jiu-jitsu guy. So the analogy for me would be when somebody comes to my jiu-jitsu class for the first time, the hardest thing that they have to do is step on the mat and put on that white belt. And that's something that I genuinely want to celebrate, and I want to get them excited about the journey. But then I always tell them after class, listen, for the first 6 months, you're going to feel like you're drowning. You're going to feel like you're going to all I want you to do is learn how to do 2 things, relax and breathe.
Yeah.
After 6 months, you will start to understand. And a lot, because most people don't last the 6 months, they quit before then. Yeah. And I wish there was something, and I think you're getting at that in this. You're giving people that once you come to faith, it's the beginning. That's putting on the white belt. And we can celebrate it and it's great, but it's the beginning.
Conversion is where you need to get so that Jesus can do what he wants to do.
Right.
It's step 1, not the finish line. And what he wants is he wants you to be holy. Right. Yeah. 1 Thessalonians 4:3, this is God's will for you, your sanctification. Right. So, sometimes I tell people like, you get a lot of, I don't know if they still do, but when I was in college, everybody wanted to know God's will for their life, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
In terms of marriage and jobs and just careers and what's God's will for my life. And I remember reading that text and it dawned on me. I was like, at the end of the day, like, I'm not sure the Lord is especially concerned with who you marry or what your job is. I mean, I'm not saying he's not concerned with that, but when you talk about God's will for your life, his will is for you to be holy. And if you're holy, whomever you marry and whatever job you pick or wherever you live, if you're holy, you'll be doing what he wants.
Right.
Like that's the goal. That's the purpose. That's why the New Testament portrays this kind of holiness as, or not just the New Testament, but the whole Bible as the normal Christian life.
Mm-hmm.